From atop the wall. Today is a very special week for us. We have two amazing things to talk about. One is my favorite card art, not my favorite card. In the comments below, comment, say what you think my favorite card art is. Because I guarantee you're probably wrong. It is Dryad Arbor, the alternate art Dryad Arbor. Oh, that's beautiful. Human form, put into tree. There's just like so much detail and background, and the foiling on this card isn't half bad. Like from the vault, foils are notoriously like, nyeh, but this one, I don't know. The foiling on it, I think, works in its favor. I feel like it kind of highlights the subject and the form of the card. So I'm just gonna quickly put that away, and now we can start talking about Pauper again. I just had to show off. Oh, it makes me feel warm and fuzzy seeing that card. Maybe I'll do a legacy deck about it sometime or something or whatever. Anyway, so we have red, black discard, and this week the deck that is the deck that we're playing. It isn't exactly something that is the most aggressive, but it does outclass a lot of people. It is similar to Dredge in the fact that we're playing bigger creatures, slightly larger creatures that we're getting for a very big discount. We're playing some Faithless Looting. We're filtering through our deck very quickly. We're not necessarily going in this hyper aggro direction, super resilience of Dredge, but we are cheating mana cost. We are playing with the graveyard, and for that's why we have our Kris Mage. Anyway, we'll get right into the deck and we'll talk more about it. Alright, so let's start with our namesake card, Kris Mage. For 1 red mana, we get a 1/1 creature Spell Shaper, and it has 1 red, tap, discard a card from your hand. It deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Doesn't sound too big, but in Pauper, the ability to place 1 damage on anything that you want repeatedly, especially against Delver decks, and there are a lot of 1/1 creatures in the format that have a lot of utility use. So placing 1 damage around, being able to chuck it back at our opponent's face if we want, and to allow us to stock the graveyard and to cast things using their madness cost is a very big deal. Now, along with these Kris Mages, our 4 of Kris Mages, we have 4 Faithless Lootings. A classic card, draw 2, discard 2, sorcery, has flashback, that costs 2 and a red. Very powerful, great in any kind of Dredge or any kind of madness deck. Then we have our backups, which are 3 Cathartic Reunions, sorcery, 1 and a red. Discard 2 cards as an additional cost, draw 3. It's not as good as Faithless Looting by any means, but it is a good backup, and it does dig us into our deck, does stock our graveyard. And if we're in the middle of the game, or very early in the game, the ability to use this thing first and then fire it off when we already have a handful of cards and things that we know we want to discard anyway and cast for their madness cost, this isn't such a bad card. We just have to remember to keep our hands stocked. Now let's get into some of our threats in this deck. We don't have anything in particular that is what we're built around, or anything that we're looking as like our main payoff and our big thing, our big finisher. Nothing like that. We have 4 Basking Root Wallas, 1/1 for 1 green mana, but it has a madness cost of 0. We're not looking to activate its activated ability at any time because we cannot produce green mana. But with the number of discard outlets that we have in this deck, we still have more, by the way. We still have more. This is actually a very good card. We have Blood Mad Vampire, a card that we can cast using its madness. For 1 and a red, we get a 4/1, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And worst case scenario, we end up paying 3 mana for this card. Not a bad creature for 3 mana. Much better creature for 2 mana. We have Gorgon Recluse next. It's a 3 of, a 2/4 for 3 black, but its mana cost is just 2 black. A little bit harder to cast, so we only have 3 in the deck. And the important thing about it is whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a non-black creature, destroy that creature at the end of combat. So it almost has Doomblade type death touch, I guess you could say. And we have 4 Gurmag Anglers. Enough said. 4 Gurmag Anglers. We're discarding a lot of cards. Easy 4 of in this deck. Grave Scrabbler. Its madness cost is 1 and a black. 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, if its madness cost was paid, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to its owner's hand. It's kind of a decent value card for 2 mana. We only really want it sometimes in the late game if we do go late, because it is a 2 for 1, and it actually helps us out a lot to just be able to return a Gurmag Angler to our hand late in the game, or let's say something like a Gorgon Recluse when we're staring down a couple of creatures. Even though they may be bigger, we can actually end up getting to choose like we may have a choice of creatures to choose from. Even maybe another Kris Mage, because for some reason we have a lot of cards in our hand and we've been disrupted the whole game, unable to really discard anything. Now, let's get into some of our removal and some of our value cards. We have 4 Fiery Tempers. The reason why I play this over Lightning Bolt is because we can discard this and still pay for Lightning Bolt, just to like fill out that discard spot, and we can cast it even if we're not discarding it. We have 2 Dark Witherings for removal. It's a cheaper Doomblade when you get to discard it. Just 1 black mana, destroy target non-black creature. We're not planning on being too interactive with our opponent. We're planning on beating their face in as soon as possible, which is why we're only running 2. And Kris Mage can help us out a lot with the single 1 damage that we place around. And then we have 2 Lightning Axes, which is 1 red mana, instant, deal 5 damage to target creature. As an additional cost, we have to discard a card or pay 5 mana. Usually we discard a card, and the ability to discard a card as part of this removal allows us to discard something like a Root Wall on turn 1. So we get a 1/1 and kill a creature with 1 card. Not half bad. And so for the last piece of removal is our Murderous Compulsion. 1 and a black, destroy target tapped creature as a sorcery. Its madness is 1 and a black, destroy target tapped creature. So it works either way. And we have 4 Alms of the Vein. Target opponent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life for 1 black mana. If we're going to be chucking a Lightning Bolt at our opponent's face or chucking a Lava Spike at an opponent's face, gaining 3 life off it incidentally is incredibly good for 1 black mana. Remember, these cards are all still castable even if we cannot discard them. So our backup plan, our worst plan, is to just like play these for their actual cost, which isn't half bad. And now, speaking of actually casting things for their real mana cost, let's get into our mana base, starting with 4 Vanefire Border Post. Vanefire Border Post is the red-black border post out of the cycle of them. It taps for red or black, and the important part about these things and why I'm playing them is you may pay 1 mana and return a basic land you control to your owner's hand rather than pay its mana cost, and it enters in tapped. So on turn 1, you can replace your basic land per turn, return that card to your hand, keeping your hand full, fixing your mana a little bit. Then we have 4 Bloodfell Caves, gain us a little life when it enters the battlefield. We're playing 4 of 5 mountains, 3 swamps, and 4 Rakdos Carnium. Again, because it enters the battlefield, returns a land we control to our hand, stocking our hand back up for, let's say, a Cathartic Reunion, or let's say just an extra damage with Kris Mage. We're not looking to accelerate ourselves too high in mana. We'd really only like to have 5 mana most of the time, and that's about it. If we go to our sideboard now, our sideboard isn't meant to necessarily accelerate our game or introduce some kind of alternate win condition. This sideboard is more of just a way for us to better interact with our opponent or play around some of their things. And for that, we have Fire Fright Mage, 1 mana, of course it's red, 1/1, Goblin Spell Shaper, pay 1 and a red, tap it, discard a card, target creature can't be blocked this turn except for artifact creatures or red creatures. It's red creature intimidate. It's similar to Kris Mage, how we can play it on turn 1, use it on turn 2 if we really absolutely need to. Probably won't, but it allows us to play against creatures that may outclass our creatures, maybe get through elves, maybe get through God knows what, but it can get through the vast majority of decks, things in the way, whether it's a Dwarven Horror, anything. Almost anything. Most decks don't play red creatures. Then we have a Flaring Pain, just to fight through some fogs in case we're suspecting that our opponent, being a green, may want to play a fog, or like a moment of peace. 2 Kneel Spell Bombs to hate on graveyards and to draw us a card, but we want to keep our graveyard safe, so that's why we're not playing Relic of Progenitus. Then we have 3 Pillages to help fight against Tron, help fight against Affinity, to help us turn the tide in our favor. Of course, this card is helping us with artifacts. Affinity is not necessarily the worst deck for us to fight, so that's why I'm not using Smash to Smithereens or any particular artifact hate against them. This just incidentally hates on artifacts, so I thought I would put it in the sideboard versus Choking Sands or something. Then we have Psychotic Episode. Target player reveals his or her hand and the top card of his or her library. You choose a card and then you put that on the bottom of their library. You can pay this, its madness cost 1 and a black versus 1 and 2 black. And this actually fights very well against Delver and certain control decks, gives us a lot of information, and can warn us to either hide our creatures from a potential wrath like Evankar's Justice or a Pestilence, or get rid of the Pestilence, help us really just get through a whole game. Then our version of Electrickery is Psychotic Haze. It deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. It has a madness cost of 1 and a black. Remember, our 1/1s are not necessarily the most important thing in the world to us. A lot of our creatures do have 1 toughness, but it is not the end of the world if we lose them. They're not that valuable. The creatures like Gorgon Recluse, Gurmag Angler, those are the things that we actually want on the battlefield. Those are a little bit closer to our higher tier creatures. We're playing 2 Psychotic Hazes. Then we have a 2 of Pyroblast. 1 red mana, choose 1, counter target spell if it's blue, destroy target permanent if it's blue. I don't know why they didn't word it as counter target blue spell, destroy target blue permanent. Whatever, it's an instant. This helps us fight against certain control decks, helps us fight against certain combo decks. When, let's say, they're trying to interact with us to prevent us from destroying or disrupting their combo piece, we can fight back. Alright, I hope you guys all enjoyed that one. Now, let's talk about the meta. Now, I've seen this white-blue Tron up on MTG Goldfish that apparently is more big in the meta. It's white-blue Tron, and it primarily plays all the things that Tron does, but it focuses more on counter spells, and it has Lone Missionaries, more ways to gain life, of course, and it really does feel like a white-blue control deck, and Tron is almost this secondary thing that it's trying to get. If it gets Tron, that's great. If it doesn't seem to get Tron, it feels like it plays completely without it, and that's very interesting to me. So I wanted to give my own take on white-blue control next week. I'm going to be doing Glass Hulk Control. Glass Hulk, if you don't know what the card is, there's the card. 3/4, when an artifact enters the battlefield, it gets +1/+1 and unblockable. So that means when Prophetic Prism enters the battlefield, draws you a card. and this thing becomes unblockable. It becomes a 4/5 unblockable for 5 mana, and it doesn't hurt to have a full playset of them in the deck because it does cycle for a hybrid white-blue, so either a white or a blue. And oh yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, follow me on Twitter, or not follow me on Twitter, doesn't matter. Alright, I'll see you next week. Come on in for that face touch.